Hello and welcome to the Adroit Dojo podcast, episode 9. Today I'm going to be talking about good books in relation to the martial artist and creating a balanced, overall rounded person. This is probably going to be, or it's definitely going to be, multiple parts, because there are a lot of books to talk about. So to start off with, I want to start with a quote from Lowell Binion. Anyway, it says, "It is the mark of an educated mind to be able to entertain a thought without accepting it." He attributed that quote to Aristotle in 1959. Who knows if Aristotle ever said it? According to sources, it's not true, so who knows? So we attribute it to Mr. Lowell. With all these books, just remember, you can entertain the thought with or without accepting it or without rejecting it. And remember that you don't need to subscribe to every aspect of a book to at least appreciate part of what they say in the book. And in the previous episode, I mentioned several books, I want to say 7, that are prerequisites for our martial art test. We will not be going over those books on this. These will be completely different ones. And that, I think, for the most part, are good for the martial artist to read. Some are a bit redundant, though, as you'll see in this beginning. I think a big reason why people should also read a lot of these books is they need to continue training outside the dojo. Books, video, and drilling at home will supplement the martial arts done in the dojo. We need to have well-rounded understanding of the body, how to effectively fight, and a well-rounded mind. So I've broken them into several categories, such as strategy and tactics, philosophy and social skills, law, technology, finance, and physical. So in this one, we will be talking about first 2, strategy and philosophy/social skills. Strategy and tactics, super easy. Half of them are named The Art of War, or some variation thereof. So we have Sun Tzu, Jomini, Clausewits, and Machiavelli. So Art of War, On War, Summary of The Art of War, etc. And then you have The Prince by Machiavelli as well. A while back, I found some Indian book on statesmanship, how to be a ruler. Unfortunately, it seems I no longer have that book, can't find that book. But if you ever find that book, tell me. It was an interesting, cool book. Unfortunately, pretty much the only thing I remember from it is that writer felt the king should have a crazy, crazy busy schedule, sleeping only about 4 hours a day, jam-packing it with statesmanship all throughout. Like one of them is meeting with his spy master at some stupid hour of the night, which is kind of amusing. It sounds like some Hollywood shit they would do. Nevertheless, though, it was a really cool book, and I wish I still had it. There are some other strategy and tactic books. They will probably fall under the physical category, since I missed some. Like, the Army has manuals on, like, urban operations and this and that. So those are going under physical for martial arts instead of strategy and tactics, for whatever reason. Just kind of an oversight on my part. Now, to socializing, and general philosophy. We have The 5 Love Languages by Gary Chapman. It's a pretty cool book. I can't say it's a pretty cool book. I've never read it. However, I'm sure most of you have seen the 5 love languages on the internet for a while now. I don't know if he started that, but it's a really cool concept. I like it, and I haven't heard any science to debunk it, or to confirm it, actually. At least, subjectively, I find it to be true. Next, we have The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck by Mark Manson. This is a pretty easy read. It's amusing. His voice sounds pretty similar to mine, actually. It's pretty cool. I don't agree to everything he says in it, but it's still a really cool read and gives you something to think about. And I think that it is something everyone needs to work on way more. Just not giving a fuck about every stupid little thing. Like, people are so hung up on the same kind of mentality they had in high school. Like, someone said, "What about me? That bitch!" Dude, who cares? Move on. You're a grown-ass man, woman, or even if you aren't a grown-ass man or woman, start acting like it. It's ridiculous to give a fuck about so many things. Like, one example he uses in the book is an old granny who doesn't have shit else going in her life, so she starts collecting coupons. So because she doesn't have shit else to care about, her only thing to care about is coupons. So when the cashier says, "Oh, this coupon's expired," or whatever, "we're not applicable," what does she do? She loses her shit and wastes everyone's fucking time. Because she gives a fuck about something none of us do. We're busy living our lives, but she has no life outside of collecting coupons and then going to the store to harass busy people. Next up is The 48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene. I've gone over the list of the 48 laws he lists. I don't recall if I actually read the book or not. It's okay. Like, if I had to categorize the books from you should definitely read to meh, who gives a fuck, this would be down in the who gives a fuck level. I mean, it's interesting, but right after that, I'm going to say The Ferangi Rules of Acquisition. Yes, the Starfleet people, or Star Trek people. It's actually kind of similar to the 48 Laws of Power. It's a little different. And, it started kind of tongue-in-cheek, but if you actually give it a look over, it's a really decent list. And I think it can at least somewhat stand up against other philosophies of power acquisition or wealth acquisition. It's not the best, obviously. I mean, it's just made up partially as a joke, half of it, but it's still really surprisingly good. Especially like the rule of acquisition 33-34, war is good for business and war is bad for business. That is crazy applicable in America. Alright, next up is How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Garegie. Yep, Garegie. It's one of those other books that I've only partially read, but it's pretty cool. It's basically boils down to be authentic to yourself, be considerate to yourself, think outside of yourself, and be comfortable appreciating people, giving compliments to people, and being thankful. It's a pretty good book. It's definitely one you should read and apply everything as you're reading it. Speaking of applying things as you read it, obviously like Sun Tzu, Jomini, that's hard to do. One way you can apply those strategies and tactics is video games, believe it or not. Like real-time strategies, maybe shooter games, because it's warfare based and oftentimes there's some sort of resource going on there, so you can try different strategies, tactics, see what's going on. Anyway, jumping back to philosophy and social, we have Outliers by Malcom Gladwell. Half the reason I listed this book is because no one seems to understand the 10,000 hour law. That was slightly coined by him. It was from his book. He's basically looking at students from the music school Juilliard. He noticed most of them had put in, at that time, about 10,000 hours. And so it's not saying, hey, do 10,000 hours of work, boom, you're a master. No, he just said, there's seems to be a correlation between the people accepted to this school and the hours they've all practiced. That's pretty much all it's saying. He never made any claims of that's what will make someone a master. It's just one of those things that society took, ran with, and bastardized. Next up, Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance by Robert Pirsig. It's also a good book, more philosophical. I think it's one of those books where you'd have to read again and again, and you kind of get different nuggets of wisdom every time you read it. I don't really know how to explain the book too well. It's one of those where you really need to just read it. Next, Social Skills Guidebook by Chris Macleod. Macleod? I don't know. I'm sorry. If you suffer from social anxiety, this is probably a really good book for you. Half that book is devoted towards that subject. Fighting anxiety, getting over social anxiety, step-by-step process to slowly integrate yourself into social events and constructs without overwhelming yourself. The other half of the book is your normal list of social skills that one should learn and whatnot. Next up is the Social Skills Picture Book by Dr. Jed Baker. This one is geared towards kids. It's a picture book, but that's what makes it so great. It's such an easy read for most people. You can really easily understand it. You can read it in a short amount of time, knock it out. And it's something I really wish more people would read because it's definitely applicable to a lot of people who fail in many of the aspects shown in the book, especially like personal space. Why people disrespect another's personal space is beyond me. And then finally, any intro to philosophy book or overview of philosophers or different philosophies. So a high school book, college book, just anything like that. I think a book like that would be better than going into a deep dive in one particular book, such as mind blank, right as I was going to say one of Plato's works. So anyway, any book by Plato, I would hold off. Just get an overview of philosophy first. Get an understanding. Western philosophy has had a lot of development in the last 200-300 years. It's crazy. Eastern philosophy seemed to really peaked in the BC times and hasn't gone anywhere since. Alright, I think that is all the books for these two subjects. And then next time, I will actually be covering a few more. Law, technology, fiscal, and then the third installment, probably physicality. This is Travis, or whatever I said my name is, and this has been the Adroit Dojo Podcast.